The Johnson family, Mark, Emma, and their young daughter, Lily, moved into an old Victorian house on the outskirts of a small town. The house, known locally as the Harrow Estate, had a rich history and was said to be over 150 years old. Mark, an architect, was enchanted by the building's classic design and saw it as a perfect restoration project. Emma, a novelist, hoped the tranquil setting would inspire her next book. Lily, 5 years old and full of curiosity, was just excited about the adventure of exploring a new home. The house was beautiful, with its grand staircase, high ceilings, and ornate woodwork. However, it had an air of neglect, with dust-covered furniture and cobwebs in every corner. The townsfolk were friendly, but seemed to avoid talking about the Harrow Estate. When asked, they would only say, "That house has its stories." From the first night, strange things began to happen. Lily complained about hearing voices in her room. She described them as whispers, soft and unintelligible, but constant. Mark and Emma initially dismissed her concerns as the vivid imagination of a child in a new place. They reassured her and tucked her back into bed. However, as days passed, the voices grew louder. Emma started hearing them too, especially at night when the house was silent. It was as if the walls themselves were speaking, carrying faint, eerie murmurs. Mark, ever the skeptic, attributed the sounds to the old house settling. One evening, while Mark was in the attic sorting through old trunks, he discovered a dusty journal. It belonged to one of the previous owners, Elizabeth Harrow, who had lived in the house over a century ago. The entries were filled with disturbing accounts of voices, shadows, and unexplained occurrences. One night, while Emma was working late on her novel, she heard Lily's voice calling for her. She went to Lily's room only to find her daughter fast asleep. As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. It vanished as soon as she looked directly at it. Shaken, she rushed back to her study, only to find her computer screen filled with random cryptic symbols. It was as if someone, or something, had been trying to communicate. Mark remained unconvinced until he experienced his own unsettling encounter. While working on the attic restoration, he felt a cold breath on the back of his neck and heard a whisper directly in his ear, "Leave this place." When he turned around, there was no one there. His rational mind struggled to accept the possibility of the supernatural, but the fear was undeniable. The voices intensified, becoming a constant presence in their lives. Emma could hardly concentrate on her writing, and Lily began having nightmares, waking up screaming about the dark ones trying to take her away. Mark found it increasingly difficult to dismiss the growing evidence of something malevolent in their home. Desperate for answers, Emma delved deeper into Elizabeth Harrow's journal. She discovered that Elizabeth had been a medium who communicated with spirits. The journal detailed how Elizabeth had tried to help the restless spirits that haunted the house but had ultimately failed. The last entry spoke of a dark presence that had grown too powerful to control, leaving Elizabeth in a state of constant terror. One night, Mark and Emma decided to set up cameras and audio recorders throughout the house to capture any paranormal activity. As they reviewed the footage, they saw shadowy figures moving through the halls and heard chilling whispers saying, "Join us," and "You cannot escape." The haunting escalated, and the family could no longer ignore the malevolent force that plagued their home. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered, and cold spots appeared throughout the house. The voices became more aggressive, often speaking directly to the family members. "Get out," they would hiss, or "You are ours now." The once beautiful Harrow Estate had become a place of fear and dread. Lily's condition worsened. She became increasingly withdrawn and spoke of a friend who lived in the shadows. She described him as a tall, dark figure with glowing red eyes. Mark and Emma, terrified for their daughter's safety, decided they had to find a way to banish the spirits once and for all. Mark reached out to a renowned paranormal investigator, Dr. Helen Grant. Dr. Grant had spent decades studying haunted locations and had written several books on the subject. She agreed to visit the Harrow Estate and investigate the phenomena. Upon arrival, Dr. Grant immediately sensed the malevolent energy within the house. She set up her equipment and conducted a thorough investigation, capturing numerous EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, recordings, and documenting several instances of poltergeist activity. She concluded that the house was indeed haunted by multiple spirits, but there was one entity more powerful and malevolent than the rest. Dr. Grant explained that this dark entity had likely been drawn to the house by Elizabeth Harrow's attempts to communicate with the dead. The medium had inadvertently opened a gateway, allowing the malevolent spirit to enter. Now, the entity sought to claim the living souls within the house. Dr. Grant devised a plan to banish the spirits. She prepared a ritual involving blessed objects, protective symbols, and a powerful incantation meant to sever the entity's connection to the house. The family gathered in the living room, forming a protective circle with Dr. Grant at its center. As Dr. Grant began the incantation, the house seemed to react violently. The temperature plummeted, and a fierce wind swept through the room, extinguishing candles and rattling windows. Shadows writhed and twisted on the walls, and the voices grew louder, now screaming in rage. The dark entity materialized before them, a towering figure of pure darkness with glowing red eyes. It moved towards Lily, its presence exuding pure malevolence. Mark and Emma held their daughter tightly, refusing to let the entity take her. Dr. Grant intensified her efforts, chanting louder and with greater urgency. The air crackled with energy as the entity roared, its form flickering and becoming less solid. With a final desperate surge, Dr. Grant completed the incantation. The entity let out an ear-piercing scream and was torn apart by the power of the ritual, dissipating into nothingness. The house fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as if a great weight had been removed. The family remained in their protective circle, breathing heavily and clutching one another. Dr. Grant assured them that the entity was gone, its hold on the house broken. In the following weeks, the voices ceased and the shadows disappeared. The Harrow Estate began to feel like a home again. Mark and Emma worked diligently to restore the house, while Lily gradually returned to her cheerful self, free from the nightmarish visions that had tormented her. Though the family never forgot their ordeal, they grew closer and stronger, united by the battle they had faced together. Dr. Grant's investigation of the Harrow Estate became a celebrated case in her career, further solidifying her reputation as a leading expert in the paranormal. The Johnsons chose to remain in the house, embracing its history and the knowledge that they had triumphed over the darkness that once plagued it. The Harrow Estate, now a symbol of resilience and courage, stood as a testament to their strength and determination in the face of unimaginable fear. If you have interesting stories and want to tell about them, send them to me by email. Link in description. Bye.